Stories are the bread and butter of Chameleon's data world. Here we can see stories used in a couple of ways. One, as a ticker at the bottom of the screen, both showing headlines in the stories in italics, followed by the body of a story. So a couple of components to stories. Stories are broken into topics as well, as we'll see. Another example, of course, in the top section is showing top stories, but in a banner format. Again, the style which you output your stories doesn't matter to Chameleon. We're going to look at how we manage that data type inside of the Chameleon UI. To access our story content, from our main dashboard in the content section, we'll click on Stories, which will bring us to our story page. Typically, we'll be working with stories, but to start with, we'll need to create some topics in order to house or categorize our stories. Here with topics, you can see two names. One where we can provide a name, which will be seen inside of Chameleon, but also a broadcast name. And this is the name that will be used on output with Chameleon. So you can either keep them the same, or depending on your needs, you can actually label the output something different or generic, such as top stories. Now that I have a topic, I can actually start assigning some stories to it. Clicking back on the story module, you can see I now have my story topic. In order to add manually new stories, I simply click check enable or click the checkbox for add new. And now I can start to enter both a headline, which is referred to as the summary here at the top. So this is the headline of my story. And then below, the body of your story. We could, if we wanted to, add images as well to our story. Again, this will depend on the template, whether we want to upload files or connect simply to a URL. I'm not going to add anything to our stories, but there you can see the simple interface to upload files if we wanted to add images to our story. There is spell check, of course, so we can incorporate. These are the default dictionaries, and of course other dictionaries are supported, simply need to be added from the configuration menu. More importantly, though, once we have our content in here, each story has certain properties. For example, does it go to air right away? We can actually enter content and have it not go to air. So for example, if we had a producer who needed to vet the content or approve the story beforehand, editors can enter content and then make sure it doesn't go to air until the producer enables it. We can determine where the story goes in our list. Right now there's nothing in our list, so whether it's first or last doesn't really matter. Also, whether the story goes to air immediately or at a future date. So in this case, we can actually have, again, enter stories and content which will air at a future date. For our example, I'm going to have it air immediately. As well as airing in the future date, we can set an expiry. By default, Chameleon sets 24-hour expiry on stories, but you can of course select no expiry, and this default can be changed in the configuration menu. For our purposes, I'm going to click on the add button so that we can see my story headline has now been added to our list here down below. On our list, we can go back in and edit the story if I found some errors or if I was the producer or editor to double check on content. So changes can be made. For example, adding some punctuation to the end of this particular story, and then that can be saved out. You can see access to all the other properties that can be changed as well, such as expiry time and current on air time. Well, I've shown you here how to add stories to Chameleon manually. Chameleon also supports the aggregation of story content through RSS feeds. Here, I will create a new topic for my RSS feed. Now that I have a topic, I click on RSS feeds, and Chameleon allows me to connect a URL to one of my given topics. In this case, I'm going to use the CTV RSS feed. On the CTV News website, I can select one of their RSS links. So here I'm going to copy the link address. If I wish, I can click on that link to actually see the raw RSS, which Chameleon will be collecting. Clicking back to my RSS tab, I will paste that link and set certain parameters for each RSS. We can keep an exclusive sync. This is where Chameleon will pretty much stay in sync with whatever content is in that RSS. So as the RSS changes or removes old stories, Chameleon will stay in sync with it. However, you can optionally disable the exclusive sync to set an automatic expiry time. You can also set a certain number of stories per read. So for example, if your feed has too many stories for your need, you can reduce the number that they'll collect. Here you can see we've set all stories to auto approve to air. So this means as soon as Chameleon collects new stories, they'll be available for air, to go to air. We're not going to contain images, so that's again optional, and whether or not the RSS feed is active. If we're happy with all those settings, we can click Add Now, and now we have an RSS feed which Chameleon will begin monitoring and updating our story content based on this feed. Now that I've added my RSS feed and connected it to a story topic, if I return to my Stories tab, I can now see my RSS feed content plus the 10 stories that Chameleon has synced within the feed. In this case, I don't necessarily need to see the Show Add New dialog box, in which case I'm going to remove that checkbox. And as a producer here, I can select which stories go to air. If I need to remove any of that content, I can quickly do so by clicking the TV icon so that the story still exists. So when the RSS feed updates, it'll still be there, but Chameleon will respect the fact that I've turned it off of the feed and it won't go to air. Stories also support playlists. The purpose of a playlist is so that in your playout or rundown, you can mix story topics within. So here, for example, I can create a mixed topic playlist, where I can drag stories from my RSS feed to include into this particular story playlist. I can then also include my demo top stories and include my manual headline that I added and include all of these within my rundown. We hope you found this video segment helpful and informative. If you have further questions on this topic or any other topic, please feel free to contact us at support@bannisterlake.com.